The galaxy had always believed it understood predators and prey. For millions of years, civilizations rose and fell under a simple rule. Strength ruled, weakness followed. The strongest species expanded, enforced order, and decided which worlds mattered and which did not. And when humanity finally appeared on the galactic stage, the verdict was immediate. Humans were labeled prey. They were divided, emotional, inefficient, and painfully slow compared to the ancient empires that ruled the stars. Their history was full of wars, yes, but wars against themselves. To the galaxy, that was not a sign of strength, it was proof of instability. At the Galactic Council, humanity's first representatives stood beneath towering alien delegates whose civilizations measured time in epochs, not centuries. Humans spoke of cooperation, shared growth, and peaceful exploration. The Council listened politely and dismissed them quietly. A species that could not stop fighting itself could never threaten the galaxy. And so, humanity was allowed to exist, but never respected. What the galaxy failed to notice was not human weakness, it was human patience. Back on Earth and its growing colonies, no one protested the Council's judgment. There were no angry broadcasts, no threats, no desperate attempts to prove worth. Humanity did something far more unsettling. They adapted. Human scientists studied alien behavior instead of alien technology. Military strategists stopped designing bigger weapons and started asking different questions. Not how aliens fought, but why they fought the way they did. Patterns emerged. Predictability became visible. Predators relied on fear. Empires relied on intimidation. And both relied on one fatal assumption, that prey runs. Humanity did not. While alien fleets expanded confidently across neutral systems, humans expanded quietly. Their ships did not announce arrival. Their colonies did not broadcast growth. Their technology evolved not for dominance, but for control, stealth control, information control, and timing control. By the time the galaxy noticed human trade routes growing unusually efficient, it was already too late to ask why. Then came the first incident. A human mining colony positioned near a resource-rich asteroid belt was attacked by a minor alien faction looking for an easy expansion. The aliens expected panic, they expected surrender, they expected prey. Instead, they found silence. No distress calls, no counterattack, no retreat. The colony was evacuated flawlessly before the first strike landed. Human ships vanished from scanners as if they had never existed. The alien faction declared victory and moved on, unaware that every movement, every weapon discharge, every command decision had been recorded, studied, archived. That faction disappeared 6 months later during an unrelated border conflict. No one connected the events. Humanity did. Across human space, a new doctrine quietly replaced old military philosophy. It was never written in law, never announced publicly, but it became universal among human commanders. We do not chase threats, we become unavoidable. Human fleets stopped responding immediately to provocations. Instead, they observed. They mapped alien supply chains, political fractures, and cultural blind spots. They learned which species valued honor, which valued survival, and which valued control above all else. And most importantly, they learned how predators think. When the next attack came, it was larger. 3 alien factions coordinated a strike on multiple human outposts, confident that humanity lacked the unity to respond effectively. Colonies burned, stations fell, and once again the galaxy waited for humans to scream, beg, or retaliate blindly. They did none of those things. Humanity went quiet. So quiet that galactic sensors began detecting something worse than chaos: absence. Entire human fleets vanished from known space. Trade routes went dark, communication traffic dropped to near zero. Some alien analysts grew uneasy. Predators fear silence more than resistance. Then, one by one, alien supply depots failed. Not destroyed, disabled. Navigation data corrupted. Command AIs fed contradictory intelligence. Fleets arrived at battle zones only to find nothing there. Allies failed to respond to distress calls they never received. Someone was watching. Someone was learning. And for the first time in galactic history, the predators began to feel hunted. Human ships reappeared not at borders, but behind them, not in large formations, but in precise, surgical deployments. They never attacked civilian worlds, they never struck randomly. Every move had purpose. Humanity was no longer reacting, they were positioning. A senior alien commander finally voiced what others feared to admit. "These humans, they aren't prey," he said. "They're studying us." That realization came too late. Because humanity had reached the final stage of its transformation. The moment every predator fears most. The moment when prey stops running and starts choosing when to strike. The galaxy did not panic all at once. At first, it denied what was happening. Alien leaders told their people that the disruptions were temporary. Supply failures were blamed on software errors. Missing fleets were explained away as navigation accidents or internal rebellions. The Galactic Council issued calm statements filled with reassuring language. But behind closed chambers, something far more dangerous than fear began to spread. Confusion. Because predators understand war. They understand resistance. They understand rebellion. What they do not understand is a threat that refuses to reveal itself. Humanity did not declare war. Humanity did not issue demands. Humanity did not even claim responsibility. Instead, alien empires began to experience something they had never faced before: consequences without confrontation. A fleet would mobilize, only to discover its fuel reserves mysteriously depleted. A planetary shield would fail during routine testing, exposing strategic vulnerabilities. Commanders received orders that contradicted one another, each confirmed as authentic. Someone was rewriting reality from the inside. Human intelligence units worked silently across hundreds of systems. They didn't hack randomly. They didn't sabotage emotionally. Every action was calculated to create doubt, not destruction. Because humans understood something predators never had. Fear fades, pain hardens, but uncertainty breaks empires. Alien commanders stopped trusting their data. Politicians stopped trusting their militaries. Allies stopped trusting each other. And still, humanity said nothing. On Earth, there were no victory parades, no propaganda broadcasts. Human citizens went about their lives unaware that the galaxy had begun to whisper a new word in secret intelligence briefings. Not prey, not weak, but anomaly. The first species to openly acknowledge the truth was one of the oldest civilizations in known space. They had survived 5 galactic extinction cycles. They had crushed thousands of worlds. And now their analysts reached a conclusion that terrified their leaders. Humans were not trying to win quickly. They were trying to end the idea of resistance entirely. Human fleets avoided decisive battles. When forced into combat, they disengaged before victory could be claimed. They left enemies alive, confused, humiliated, and unsure why they were spared. To the galaxy, this behavior made no sense. To humans, it made perfect sense. Because humans had learned through centuries of self-inflicted conflict that total domination does not come from destruction. It comes from control of narrative, timing, and choice. You cannot fight an enemy who decides when every battle begins and ends.
Then came the moment the galaxy could no longer ignore. A coalition strike force, one of the largest ever assembled, was formed to lure humanity into open war. Hundreds of ships gathered near a human-controlled corridor, daring humans to respond. This time, humanity did. Human fleets appeared simultaneously in 5 distant systems, not near the coalition, but at the infrastructure that supported it. Shipyards went offline, resource hubs shut down, communication relays were disabled with surgical precision. Within hours, the coalition fleet was stranded, fully armed, fully manned, and completely irrelevant. Not a single human weapon fired at them. The message was unmistakable. You are not worth the effort. That was when fear finally replaced denial. Predator species began pulling fleets back from borders. Expansion plans were quietly abandoned. Military doctrines that had worked for millennia suddenly felt outdated. Because humanity had introduced a terrifying new rule to galactic warfare. Victory does not require confrontation, only inevitability. Human diplomats reappeared at the Galactic Council, not with threats, but with proposals, trade agreements, mutual defense frameworks, transparency initiatives. The Council listened differently this time, not because humans were loud, but because humans had proven they could collapse empires without firing a shot. Behind the scenes, some alien leaders begged for understanding. Others plotted desperate countermeasures. A few, very few, recognized the deeper truth. Humanity was not seeking revenge. They were building a galaxy where attacking humans simply did not make sense. And still, one question haunted every council chamber, every war room, every ancient mind across the stars. If humans could do this while holding back, what would happen if they ever stopped? The answer remained unknown, because humanity was still watching, still learning, still deciding, and the most terrifying part was yet to come, the moment when the galaxy would realize that humans were no longer reacting to threats, they were defining the future.
By the time the galaxy realized something fundamental had changed, it was already too late to reverse. The problem was not that humans were stronger. The problem was that humans had redefined what strength meant. For thousands of cycles, galactic civilizations had measured power in predictable ways: fleet size, weapon yield, territorial control, population dominance. Every empire rose and fell by those same rules. Humans never accepted those rules. Instead, they asked a far more dangerous question. What if power is the ability to decide when violence is unnecessary? Alien historians would later struggle to pinpoint the exact moment humanity crossed the invisible threshold from emerging species to existential force. Some said it happened when the first predator empire dismantled its expansion fleets without a single human battle. Others argued it was earlier, when human observers infiltrated trade systems, governance networks, and cultural frameworks without detection. But those closest to the truth understood something else. Humanity had been watching the galaxy long before the galaxy noticed humanity. Humans studied alien psychology with unsettling patience. They mapped behavioral patterns, political cycles, generational fears. They learned which species ruled by fear, which ruled by ritual, and which ruled by illusion. And once humans understood those patterns, they did what predators never expected. They adapted quietly. Alien leaders began reporting an impossible phenomenon. Their populations no longer supported war against humans, not because of fear alone, but because humans had become essential. Human logistics networked stabilized fragile economies. Human medical breakthroughs quietly saved billions of alien lives. Human engineers repaired ancient infrastructure no one else understood anymore. Without ever announcing it, humanity embedded itself into the foundation of galactic civilization. You cannot declare war on the system that feeds you. You cannot destroy the species that keeps your children alive. That realization terrified the old empires more than any fleet ever could. In classified council sessions, ancient rulers asked the same question in different languages. Are humans controlling us? The answer was worse. Humans were not controlling anyone. They were offering something far more dangerous: choice. Trade instead of conquest, stability instead of expansion, cooperation instead of domination. For species built entirely around predation, this was psychological poison. Some attempted resistance. A coalition of fringe warlords launched unauthorized attacks on human civilian convoys, believing they could provoke retaliation. They expected fire. They expected annihilation. What they received was silence. Human ships rerouted. Human trade adjusted. Human support vanished from their systems overnight. Within months, those regions collapsed economically. Famine followed. Political uprisings toppled regimes. Survivors fled to human-controlled territories. Humanity never blocked them, never punished them, never reminded them why it happened. The lesson spread faster than fear ever could. Attack humans, and humans do not destroy you. They simply remove you from relevance. Across the galaxy, a new classification appeared in threat assessment databases. It wasn't labeled enemy. It was labeled non-viable. That label meant one thing: if humans decide you no longer matter, you stop mattering. At this stage, younger civilizations began to idolize humanity. Human philosophy was studied. Human conflict resolution models were taught in academies that once trained conquerors. Children across alien worlds grew up hearing a strange new myth: that humans were the species that survived their own darkness and learned from it. Older empires, however, were less optimistic. They remembered what humans were capable of when pushed. Archived records resurfaced: Earth wars, extinction events, internal collapses, evidence that humans had once nearly destroyed themselves and adapted. That was the final realization that broke the remaining resistance. If humans had learned restraint after surviving their own worst impulses, then the galaxy had never faced a threat more disciplined. The Galactic Council eventually voted unanimously for the first time in its history, not to surrender, not to submit, but to align. Humanity was offered permanent advisory status, not because they demanded it, but because refusing felt irrational. When the human representative finally spoke before the assembled civilizations, their message was calm, almost gentle. "We are not here to rule," the human said. "We are here to make sure no one ever needs to rule through fear again." Some believed it, some did not, but none dared test it. Because every civilization now understood the truth humanity had never bothered to hide. Humans do not hunt out of hunger. They hunt to end the hunt itself. And when the galaxy finally fell silent, when fleets rested, borders stabilized, and fear receded, there was one final unsettling thought shared across 1,000 species. If this is what humans choose to do while being merciful, what would happen if the galaxy ever forced them to stop? That question had no answer, and humanity preferred it that way.
Long after the last fleets powered down and the borders of the galaxy stopped shifting, humanity did something no dominant species had ever done before. They stepped back. Not in retreat, not in weakness,
but in restraint. Human worlds did not expand endlessly. They did not plant flags on every habitable planet. They did not demand tribute, loyalty, or obedience. Instead, they focused inward, on refinement, education, and preparation. That choice confused the galaxy. Every empire before them had chased growth until collapse. Humans stopped growing on purpose. Alien philosophers debated this endlessly. Some claimed humans had grown soft. Others argued they were hiding something. A few, those who truly understood, recognized the pattern. Humans were doing what predators never did. They were choosing balance over domination. Across generations, stories changed. What began as fear evolved into legend. Human behavior became case studies in restraint. Their wars were no longer remembered for brutality, but for how rarely they occurred and how decisively they ended. Children on distant worlds asked their elders, "Are humans still dangerous?" And the elders would pause, then answer carefully, "They are dangerous only if you make them necessary." That sentence alone kept peace for centuries. Human ambassadors traveled without escorts. Their ships carried no visible weapons. Their colonies integrated rather than displaced. They taught alien species how to protect themselves instead of depending on human force. To many, this seemed irrational. Why teach others strength? Why share knowledge? Why not rule forever? Humans had an answer, but they rarely spoke it aloud. They remembered what it was like to be hunted. They remembered being underestimated. And most importantly, they remembered what happened when power was held without conscience. Deep within human archives, never shared publicly, were records of contingency plans, not for conquest, not for rebellion, for survival. Plans designed not to rule the galaxy, but to end it if necessary. These plans were never threats, they were safeguards, because humanity understood something the galaxy still struggled to accept. Peace only exists when someone has the strength to destroy everything and chooses not to. That knowledge shaped human culture. Children were raised not to fear war, but to understand it. Soldiers were trained not to crave battle, but to end it quickly. Leaders were taught that restraint was not weakness, it was responsibility. And so, when minor conflicts erupted on the fringes of space, humans did not intervene immediately. They watched. They waited. They allowed civilizations to solve their own problems. Only when extinction loomed did humanity step forward. And when they did, the galaxy listened. Not because humans demanded attention, but because silence fell instinctively when they spoke. In time, even the oldest species accepted an uncomfortable truth. Humanity had become the galaxy's moral constant. Not judges, not gods, but a reminder. A reminder of what happens when intelligence evolves alongside empathy, when power matures instead of escalating, when a species survives its own darkness and refuses to export it. And yet, humanity never allowed itself to be mythologized completely. They corrected exaggerated stories. They downplayed their role. They laughed at rumors of invincibility. Because humans knew something myths often forget. They were still human, still capable of anger, still capable of mistakes, still capable of devastation if pushed far enough. That was the final lesson the galaxy learned. Humans are not peaceful because they are harmless. They are peaceful because they understand exactly how far violence can go, and they choose every day not to take that path.
So when future civilizations ask why the galaxy remains stable, why borders hold, why wars end quickly, why fear no longer governs the stars, the answer is always the same. Because once, long ago, the galaxy called humans prey, and humanity decided to prove something far more terrifying. That true predators don't chase endlessly. They watch, they wait, and when necessary, they end the hunt forever.